issue with name plates. A few moments of housekeeping. We are not expecting any fire alarms this evening. We are not expecting any fire alarms, so if you hear the alarm, that is to be taken note of. You'll please leave by either of these two doors, make your way down the corridor and outside, and follow officers and ourselves to a place of safety. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, if we could come to order, please. I'd like to start the meeting. We are the Planning Committee. First of all, can I ask for apologies under item 1? Apologies received.
Apologies from Councillors Hussain and Ralston.
And I have,
Councillor Patrick will be running late.
I have had an indication from Councillor Patrick that she's delayed and will be here as soon as possible. Agenda item 2 is the minutes of the last planning committee. That was on the 7th of October. You have had those minutes circulated to you. I'll now ask, does anybody have any questions or points of information or correction on those minutes? I don't see anybody. Can I therefore ask for a show of hands from those people who were present to accept these into the record?
Thank you very much.
That's carried by all those present. In that case, I will sign those minutes at a suitable moment, and they will be. And we're now moving on to our declarations of interest. I'm sure you're all aware that council is reminded of the need to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests that relate to business on the agenda. Okay, can I ask if any councillors, members present on the committee wish to make any such declaration? Again, I see none. We are moving on to item number 4. This is the access of press and public. I see no reason at all for any of the items on the agenda to move into part 2, and therefore do not need to exclude press or public. And we are now moving on to the agenda item number 5. This is planning application number 240531 RES. This is the land at Red Hills, Exeter Lane. And we have Officer Cummings to make his presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So this application is a reserved matters proposal by Tilia Homes Limited for 80 dwellings on a site on the western edge of the city. Wrong way. Outline approval was granted at appeal on 7th of February 2022. That outline approval approved the principle of the development and the quantum, so up to 80 dwellings, and it also approved the access, which is a single vehicle access point from Red Hills into the site. The site itself is 4.25 hectares of open fields. It's bordered by Red Hills to the west and Exeter Lane to the north. The east is immediately bordered.
Sorry, let's point out that Councillor Patrick, we have literally only just started, and therefore, if you wish, you can continue the discussion. We have only come to the very first slide.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies being late.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the east of the site is bordered immediately by a footpath and then dwellings on Cheltenham Close. To the south is a former breaker's yard and woodland, and with dwellings further south at St Peter's Close. As the principal and access matters for the development have already been secured through the outline appeal decision, this application being considered relates to the reserved matters of scale, layout, appearance and landscaping. Planning obligations were secured as part of the outline consent, and it's therefore not possible to alter or add any additional requirements to them at this stage. It's also worth noting that there are conditions set out on the appeal decision, and this is referred to in my report, where some items such as construction management plans, landscape ecology management plans, they are a requirement of the outline conditions, so they wouldn't be repeated on the proposed conditions for this particular reserve matters. There were conditions that required details to be submitted as part of the reserve matters, and they have all been complied with. 12 objections were received in relation to the scheme. However, the majority of them related to matters outside the scope of the reserved matters. These included the principle of the development, the access and impact on local services. One matter that was raised that is worth mentioning to you is in relation to pedestrian access to the site. This isn't a matter that forms part of this reserved matters application. There is a condition requirement, it's a preoccupation condition on the outline consent that requires a scheme of improvements designed to facilitate pedestrian use of Redhill, including the provision of a footway between Exeter Lane and St Peter's Mount. And this will be dealt with separately through the condition discharge process. Oh, keep pressing the wrong way. This is the overall site layout. The applicants worked proactively with the council through this reserve matters. They engaged in pre-application and design review panel, and they've worked proactively with amendments through the assessment of the reserve matters. The overall layout of the site itself, as you can see, is somewhat narrow, with the eastern edge being more visible and in a more prominent location on the ridge of the hill. The site itself is proposed to be split into 3 character areas to help mitigate for the design issues generated by the long and narrow nature of the site. The first of the character areas is mostly detached dwellings in a similar design style to those of Barley Villas. They've been set back from Red Hills itself, and a play park has been included in this area and positioned in that northwest corner, in part due to the ground land level changes, but also to prevent overlooking and dominance of new buildings on dwellings at Barley Villas. Area 2 is a much more densely developed area with semi-detached and terraced properties. This area is primarily screened by the woodland to the south and is more suited to accommodate this higher level of development. On the eastern side of it, then, top right corner of the slide, you can see there's a footpath that's proposed to connect into Exeter Lane. Because of the steepness of the ground, unfortunately, it does have to have quite a few switchbacks, but we have worked to make it as less brutal as we could. Area 3, as I said, this is the most visible area, sitting on the ridge of the hill. Following advice from the council's urban design and landscape officer, this particular area has a more formal layout with villa-style dwellings that overlook the informal public space to the south. This approach was taken to prevent the dominance of a more sort of generic style urban extension and create a more formal edge to it. There are trees, as you can see, just to the south of the housing, above where the first of the drainage ditches are, and they've been selected to be planted at semi-mature stage to help with initial screening of the development. There's also a link on the eastern side to the existing footpath that runs from Exeter Lane down to St Peter's Mount. There's also 2 additional play parks, and there is proposed to be a viewing platform. So where it's hard to see on this plan, but on the right-hand side of the drainage area, you can see there's the car parking area. Just to the south of that, there's supposed to be a small viewing platform to make the most of the position of the site and see the views across the city. All of the dwellings meet the nationally described space standards and are not considered to create any overlooking or overshadowing issues, both for occupants of the development or neighbouring properties. The majority of the gardens meet the recommended levels. However, it is noted that there are 12 that do not. This was due to a late stage requirement to increase the buffer zones for woodland to the south, and this forced the garden sizes to have to be adjusted. Whilst this is unfortunate, the recommended levels are noted as guidance only, and it's not considered that the harm on occupants is significant enough to warrant a refusal on those grounds. The parking levels meet recommended requirements, and there's suitable bin store and cycle storage. Concerns were raised from the public about the drainage. There's proposed to be an attenuation tank and a basin on the western side of the site by Red Hills. And there's also proposed to be 2 attenuation basins on the eastern side. Infiltration tests showed that it wasn't possible for these to infiltrate into the ground from this site. So they would be connecting into an existing southwest surface water sewer. And it has been demonstrated that Southwest Water have agreed to this and the levels of infiltration, the levels of discharge into the system. This was found acceptable by the lead local flood authority. The real issue for this scheme is the raised position of the eastern aspect of the site. As the principle of development of this site is for 80 dwellings, and that was allowed at appeal, there is an unavoidable impact that has been found to be acceptable of the dwellings, especially in this third character area. However, through proactive working on the building design, layout, and planting, it's considered that this has been acceptably mitigated. The following slides show the existing year 1 and year 15 situation to demonstrate how the development will be viewed long term. So we've got from Litchfield Road as existing, that will be year 1, and then year 15 as the planting grows. It's worth noting that there is a condition in relation to tree establishment, that any tree or shrub that dies within the initial 5 years must be replaced, and that there is also a requirement for a landscape management plan to ensure that the trees are appropriately maintained and trimmed accordingly and appropriately. As well as that one, we've also got the views from St Peter's Mount, so that's the existing. That's the year 1, and that will be year 15. I would say these viewpoints were locations selected by the council and recommended. They weren't ones just put forward by the developer with it. The proposal is therefore considered to be acceptable and is recommended to this committee for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I ask if members have questions for the officer relating to his presentation, please?
Councillor Hughes.
Sorry, thank you. I just wanted to ask about the trees that die bit, that very last section where you said there will be a landscaping management scheme and so on. Who's going to monitor that? Is that something that we're going to have to monitor ourselves as a city council? Will it be the tree manager's job? Whose responsibility will that be?
So the condition would require them to set out how it will be monitored as part of it. So that forms part of the detail they have to submit to us. It includes details of how it will be monitored, how they will take these how they will maintain it, and what management company will be in charge of it. The actual reporting, if there is any failure in it, would be similar to most other conditions where we would generally rely on members of the public to let us know if there is anything that seems untoward with it. We wouldn't normally monitor these sites ourselves long term.
Yeah, thank you. So just to clarify then, it's going to be down to whichever management company the developer chooses to monitor the situation, and there's no, I guess my question is there any comeback if they don't do what you've asked them to do when those, because looking at the 15-year viewpoint, that looks lovely, but if half of those trees die before then, who is going to make sure that that 15-year outlook is possible still? Does that make sense?
So if there was any breach of the approved landscape management schemes, then we would expect them to put it back as it has been agreed. They would be expected to be undertaking everything in accordance with those details, and we would take planning compliance action as necessary.
That's what I need to say.
Councillor Hughes. Avon calling. Right. Councillor Patrick.
Haven't had an Avon calling joke for a long time. Thank you for your presentation. I've actually had a question raised to me about the NDSS, particularly as it relates to 2-bedroomed houses with studies. so basically the essence of this question is that the developers have got some 2-bedroom houses in the development application which also have studies. So therefore they're being, when it comes to do they meet the space standards, they are meeting the space standards for a 2-bedroomed house, but not a 3-bedroom house because they're not 3 bedrooms. One of the rooms is a study. And the garden size is also matches up with a 2-bedroom when it comes to meeting the NDSS. However, apparently, and obviously this relates to a different development, not this one, apparently in other developments, the same model of property with the same name, as we know developers do sort of keep the same sort of names for some of their properties, different developments, also is a 2-bedroom with a study, but is marketed as 3-bedroom. So it's similar sort of layout, but it's been marketed as 3-bedroom. So I suppose my point is that is there a situation where the developers could be marketing these properties and selling them as 3 bedrooms and maintaining that they meet their required standards, but actually that will be misleading?
The marketing aspect of it would fall outside of the scope of planning with it. It's very difficult to ever put a condition restricting the use of certain rooms to be only a bedroom. It's not necessarily an enforceable condition. So it does fall into an area that falls outside of what we deal with. It was something that we would normally expect to be picked up when people are buying properties, say by their solicitors or when they're doing the searches on it instead.
Okay.
So thank you. So if there's nothing else we say there. So if in the plan, if they're putting them down as a 2-bedroom and we're plus a study, when we're agreeing with them that it meets the NDSS requirements, what we're saying is it meets the requirements for 2-bed, not 3-bed.
That is correct. Yes, we would assess it as shown on the plans.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you. 2 points of clarification. Back to the trees again, if I might. You showed us the initial 1 year and the 15-year projection. Do we have any control of the age of the trees that are initially planted? Because there's a difference if you put a young sapling in that's a semi-mature tree of actually making that space time of 15 years of actually achieving that. And are we indicating the type of trees so that are they evergreen or deciduous? Because that will affect the visibility when you were showing them in full green capacity there. So you deal with that one first of all, and then I'll do my second point.
So the tree species has been set out on the one of the landscape plans, and it's been agreed with our ecologists. As far as I'm aware, I think they are. I get the words confused, but I think it's the evergreen ones that are there. It's also, following discussions, been agreed that the trees that will be planted, especially in front of the dwellings and in certain places, will be as mature as we can, and the age of them has been secured.
The second point refers to the paragraph on page 17, which relates to affordable housing. And whilst it's most encouraging that this developer is offering 35% affordable housing on the site, you didn't indicate in your presentation. I'd be grateful if you could indicate where these 3 blocks are, so we've got an idea where the affordable housing is within the development. Because you were saying their positioning is acceptable. Can we see where it is, please? And secondly, following up from that, at what time period are we actually guaranteed these houses are delivered? In other words, how long has a developer to come up with a viability case to say why they can't deliver these?
If I answer the second part of that question first, they would be expected to be delivered alongside everything else that is being, as the development progresses, we would be expecting them to be delivered. There's been no conversations about viability or any other matters of that nature. As part of this application, so we would expect it to be in line with the rest of the build out. There's not been any application for a phased delivery of this site, although it will likely be a start at one end, work your way through. In terms of the affordable housing, I didn't put the slide in on the presentation, but I can show you where they are. Yeah, I think I will. And I'll just get up and point because the pointer is interesting. So the affordable housing is this block here, a number of these properties, this block of flats here, this block of flats here, and these dwellings up in this corner.
Just to clarify the
comment you made about viability. So does that mean that viability cannot be made an argument from now on, or at a future stage, the developer can raise the issue of viability?
The applicant, as far as we are aware, the applicant will be delivering the scheme as presented in front of you. Should they wish to change anything, such as the level of affordable housing, they would need a deed of variation to the Section 106 agreement, and that would need approval from relevant parties, or it may go to planning committee for a decision on it. So there is the possibility that it could be changed, but it's not a straightforward yes/no situation.
Before I take Councillor Banyard, I just want to have some questions myself. You have got in your presentation some very nice slides of what it's going to look like after 15 years. They have been generated by a computer. Can you please confirm that that is actually an accurate portrayal of what it will look like and not just somebody's dream?
Yes, Chair. They have been undertaken by a certified, they're verified views from a certified photo montage expert.
And the second part of that really relates to the planting. You're talking about semi-mature trees. Will those be planted immediately, or is that after all the building has been done?
It will likely be just after the building is done, because the groundworks that will be occurring would disrupt their root protection zones. But we do have a planting schedule, and the landscape ecology plan will set out the planting seasons. It would normally be expected within the first planting season following finishing of that part of the development.
Thank you. I have Councillor Banyard, then Councillor Jobson, and then Councillor Pole.
So just wanted to build on Councillor Patrick's point. If we look at the table on page 28 and the house labelled the Cornwood, which is according to the developer a 2-bedroomed house. The exact same house is being marketed in Alphington as a 3-bedroomed house. The plans are exactly the same. And the room that was marked as a study on the Cornwood here is marked as bedroom 3. Now, why do you think that a developer would mark one of the rooms as a study rather than a bedroom when they're trying to get these houses built, but market it as a 3-bedroom house when they're trying to sell them?
As I said, I have to assess the plans that are submitted. It wouldn't be for me to speculate on why a developer has chosen to make decisions on it. So I wouldn't unfortunately be in a position to answer that question.
And if I can interject, really, we can't sort of guess as to what's going to happen to these. We have to look at the application that we've got in front of us and judge it based on what we see in front of us, rather than trying to predict behaviour or marketing principles of the developer. Have you finished, Councillor Banyard? Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Councillor Jobson, please.
Thank you. 2 questions, if I may. One about play areas. It's good to see some, but are they being aimed at all age groups, and will one of them be sufficiently large to be able to accommodate football posts so that kids can kick a ball around?
They do cover a range of ages. So there's 2 laps, the local areas of play, which are aimed at the generally smaller children, and they are the areas by the eastern drainage ditch. The leap on the western side is a larger play area. The details of them are required by the planning obligation, so we don't know exactly what's going in them at this point. I don't know if there's any additional funding off the top of my head towards anything else. I would say there's also a planning contribution towards a neighbourhood equipped area of play at Cemetery Field Play Area, or in the vicinity of the development as well. So that would cover the older age groups as well.
Not necessarily actually on site, they'd have to go elsewhere.
For some parts of it, yes.
Yes. And I can flag up that it's always a good idea to have football kicking on site, because that's where they'll kick them if they possibly can. Second question is about sewage, and that is, are any of the sewage system up here going to be combined sewage and grey waste, or is it going to be separate? And at any point, as it makes its journey to wherever it makes its journey to, will it join into combined pipes? Because we know that when you get these unusual rain events, that can put pressure on combined pipes, which causes sewage outflows.
As far as I'm aware, the on-site side of things is split. I'm not entirely sure where it goes off-site. I know that it connects into a off-site surface water sewer for the surface water and the foul separately, but I'm not sure further down the line what would happen with it. I know that the locally flood authority have raised no objections to the proposed drainage system, and that South West Water have been accepting of it. And normally South West Water would normally not accept combined connections unless they are totally satisfied that there will be no impact from it.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Pole, please.
Yeah, just about the affordable housing. Is that affordable housing provision typical of our normal standard for buffer plotting? Because it seems to be quite clustered on this site.
Yes, it is. So our clusters.
Affordable housing.
Yeah. So our affordable housing clustering is normally up to 10 dwellings, and this, I believe, meets that. I did consult with our affordable housing specialists, and they raised no objections to the layout or the provision that's being delivered. It is also in line with the percentage requirements of the 35% being split down into social housing, intermediate housing, and first homes.
And with the flats being probably sort of less likely to own a car, are they in the correct place on this site, given that they're sort of up the end there?
We wouldn't differentiate with car parking requirements from other dwellings. It's just classed as a dwelling. So there is the block of flats on the eastern side. There is also a block of flats in the mid-ends area too as well. So it is sort of split between those two areas, just not in character area 1.
And are the gardens with those those affordable housing properties all separate out gardens, or are there communal gardens for those properties?
Do you mean for the flats, or do you just
Or well, I can see that each of the houses has got, so for the flats, yeah.
Yes, the flats have communal space, shared space.
Thank you. Can I ask if there are any other questions of the officer based on his presentation? In that case, we shall move on. So, speaking under Standing Order number 44, I call Councillor Bialik.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I won't keep you too long. As I say, this is a reserved matters, and much has been done, and you've got a very difficult task in front of you because the inspector has already said yes. And I would first of all like to congratulate the team on how they've mitigated a number of the problems on this site in particular. I think it's quite important. number of issues, and I've listened intently to the contributions from councillors, and I dare say many of those contributions can be transposed on a number of other applications that come forward across the city. One of the question I would like to ask you, Chair, is some of the highway stuff which has been done, and I know it's all been done through your already agreed, but what I would like to think, because some stuff still has to be agreed, which is not a matter for the planning committee, I would like to think that although it's delegated under the powers to the officers, that we would, planning committee would ask that the chair of the committee be consulted on any of those changes as they come forward. I think there needs to be a little bit of local and political oversight on all of that. Not that to distrust the officers at all, but I just think that would give some added confidence to people in the area going forward. The issue I wanted to raise with you is about the drainage, and I get it where it is, but you see along the northern boundary of the site is Exeter Lane, and I don't know if many of you have had the opportunity to walk along Exeter Lane. It is a traditional country lane. It is full of potholes, I accept that. Actually, I never want to see them filled in because it just means cars will go down there, so I'm quite happy that they don't get filled in. And so it is a bit of a rat run for the school, but that's a matter for the Highways Committee to deal with. I think it's important that those hedges are maintained, and through any of the conditions, I feel sure the officer will confirm that that's all to be maintained, those hedgerows on the northern boundary. And also, if you come to the west, opposite Barley Villas, there's a hedgerow, which is again a country hedgerow. I'd like to think, and we've had experiences in the Pinot area whereby they were asked not to mow it down or put it down, and guess what? A digger goes in, oops, just went the wrong way, and the hedge went. And of course, we want to avoid that. I think it's an important entrance to the city and also entrance to the countryside in the other direction as it goes forward. I know what will happen in relation to Lugs Farm, the Lugs Farm up to the site up there, what was the scrapyard site before, and I think many people know my views in relation to the road safety along there, and an inspector on another site has made that perfectly aware. But all in all, Chair, we are at a stage whereby a development has been approved by the inspector. We can stamp our feet and holler and shout and cry, but this is it. I think the team has done a very good job to bring it forward. That barley fillers, those fence. And one other thing about that northern boundary is, and I see the attenuation tanks are all on this side, just to let you know, when it rains, Exeter Lane gets flooded, and you cannot pass through unless you've got a good pair of Wellingtons. So when you look at the landscape and how it goes, it will end up getting flooded down there. So if just officers can bear that in mind and when talking and when you're exercising the conditions, to just bear that in mind. And so, because that would be an improvement if it's going to be used for pedestrians and cyclists accessing it through that, well, very, very important. But in the main, Chair, you know, good work's been done by the committee, and if I can have some assurances, well, I suppose it's up to you. If the chair could be involved in those decisions, which has been going back to the thing, and also in relation, I suppose, at the very least, any variations would come to the delegation meetings at the appropriate time. Those are the assurances that I would be seeking as a councillor and as a resident. We fully accept that we need housing in Exeter, to be brutally honest. And so I've worked it out that this is 1.5 million less 80. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. Can you please remain at the moment? Thank you. Members, do you have questions for a councillor based on his presentation to you?
I see
no questions. Thank you very much,
Questions
Councillor.
tomorrow.
Yes.
Right. Right, so we're now moving on to speakers from the floor. The first is a supporter. Can I call Chris March, please? Mr. Marsh, in order to be able to speak, you need to press the right-hand button on the speakers. You will have 3 minutes from when you start. No need to rush into the start. Whenever you're ready, please, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee on behalf of my client, Tilia Homes, in respect to this application for approval of reserve matters for residential development at Red Hills, Exeter Lane. As has been set out in your officer's considered report, the applicant has worked closely with the council, including through an earlier formal pre-app and the design review panel, to address consultative comments and produce a scheme in line with officers' expectations. You will be aware that principle of development has been firmly established through the grant of outline permission, as you've heard, as is the point of access, which must now be regarded as fixed. Current proposals also reflect the general parameters indicated at that stage, and a linear layout being a logical interpretation of the site's proportions and particular characteristics, including ecological margins, which exceed the minimum widths established at the outline stage, while ensuring that homes benefit from a good standard of usable outside space. As set out in the report, the site is arranged as a series of 3 character areas, ensuring a suitable response to its various characteristics and the relationship to the surrounding area, and this will both create visual interest and promote navigability and connectivity. This approach includes those featured villa-type dwellings with reduced roof pitches to ameliorate any unduly dominant or suburban impression, while making the most efficient use of land in line with national policy and guidance. We are aware that development will be visible from the surrounding area, and for this reason, the proposals include significant planting, including the translocation of hedgerow for the benefit of biodiversity, with a focus on quickly maturing species that will provide visual screening of views from the south early on in the development's lifespan. It's important to recognise the initial visual impacts will be steadily reduced from day one, and the scheme will soon assimilate completely with this setting. The proposals fulfil the full outline quantum of 80 dwellings, and that includes within that number provision of 28 much-needed affordable homes, making an important contribution to local housing supply and providing a range of sizes and types of housing for real families. All homes meet the nationally described space standards, as you've heard, exceed the building regulations in terms of energy efficiency. They'll all be equipped with air source heating systems, no gas boilers, and benefit from vehicle and cycle parking. The scheme also delivers other real local benefits, including the provision of new public open space, including play facilities, and the benefit of new and existing local residents alike, providing positive sustainable drainage where conditions are currently unmanaged, ecological enhancement, as we heard, and financial contributions to local infrastructure as detailed in your officer's report. These are real material benefits to the proposals, which the approval of the current application will release and need to be weighed accordingly alongside your officer's conclusion that the proposals satisfy the policies of the development plan and recently updated national planning policy framework, which places an increased emphasis on the need to deliver homes. And in that regard, going back to the point about viability, it is Tilia's intention to simply deliver this site as proposed. I therefore endorse your officer's recommendation to the committee today and trust that councillors will approve the application, subject to the conditions set out in the report before you. Thank you.
That's a perfect timing, Mr. Marsh. Thank you very much indeed. Yes, that's within the second. Well done, sir. Can I invite members to ask questions? I see Councillor Mitchell first, then Hughes, and then...
Thank you for the clarification on the issue I raised about so close and viability. So is it not on other sites you developed in this locality and neighbouring local authorities, is 35% the normal sort of figure you have offered and had accepted by local authorities and delivered?
So that was fixed at the outline stage, and I understand it's a policy compliant figure. The developer obviously does that viability appraisal at taking the time of taking the site on, and I think, being in the business of delivery and not the business of land banking, they would have challenged it at outline stage. I think had that been a concern.
Yeah, happy with that. But I just wonder, is this a practice that you adopt across other sites in the community? Have you delivered 35% elsewhere for us? Have you not developed in the area?
I'm afraid I can't answer that one.
I'm only acting on I just want to know whether this fits a norm of what you
question.
normally provide, or whether there's something exceptional about this particular site. Coming back to the trees, and particularly the landscaping and the play areas, and as we said, some of this development is going to take 15 years to get to maturity. Who at that stage will be responsible for maintaining those sites and ensuring those trees are still there in 15 years?
Yeah, so the expectation will be that is transferred to a management company. That's obviously appointed by the developer and funded by standing payments for incoming market residents. They would be responsible for maintaining it in accordance with the landscape management plan, which, as you heard, is a condition. So that needs to be agreed, it needs to be complied with, and it's an enforceable, part of the planning permission, if you like.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Hughes.
Two quick ones, if I may, Chair. First of all, you mentioned quickly maturing species. Are you able to tell us what those are?
I'm afraid you've probably found the limits of my knowledge when it comes to planting specifications. It is set out through the planting plans and the landscape strategy, and I understand that our landscape designers have specified and agreed with the council's officers species that they feel will provide the most effective screening as soon as possible. Obviously, as you've heard, we had a recent change to the scheme to introduce some more semi-mature species as well to provide immediate cover, but I'm afraid my subject knowledge, my horticultural knowledge, is rather limited beyond that.
And the other quick question is really that I would just like to ask for some reassurance publicly. Just looking at where the drainage areas are, at some point they're going to be filled with water, I imagine, because that's their function, which means that's where the bats will congregate, because that's where all the midges will be. So I just want some reassurance that that will be taken into account in the screening between the lighting that's going to come from the houses and those drainage areas, because that's their main, they're going to hang out there. So we don't want to put them off. Sorry, I've got to think about that.
No, that's entirely understandable. Obviously, the application's been supported by an ecological report, an ecological scheme, and as well as preserving obviously the site margins with the planting. As I understand it, that's incorporated a full look at potential flight lines and so on within the site, and those kind of commuting and foraging opportunities such as they exist. It's again specialist knowledge, but as I understand it, that's been considered as a whole, as well as obviously complying with the outline parameters which looked at those.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick.
Hi, thank you so very much for your presentation. Just going back to the NDSS again. So obviously you've confidently said that the houses meet the NDSS requirements. So and obviously that's being sort of packaged to us as an advantage of this particular application. So can we talk about, say, the Cornwood, 2-storey, 2-bed, meets the NDSS requirements? It's 72.5 square meters. Will that be marketed as a 2-bed in your knowledge?
I'm afraid my involvement in marketing doesn't quite extend to that, and I can't give you an answer in that respect. What I would say on the NDSS point is that those standards are what they are, and if your officers had looked at those 2-bed plans and said, well, that study doesn't look like a study to me, that looks like a 3rd bedroom, then they would have raised that and they would have reported it accordingly. Obviously you can't legislate through planning as to how anyone uses a dwelling. Some people buy a 4-bed dwelling and have 2 of those bedrooms as home offices, perhaps. Unfortunately, I can't give you any more of a kind of assurance than that.
No, I guess we have got in writing that Cornwood is a 2-bed, and that's the requirements it meets are for a 2-bedroom house, not a 3-bedroom. So we do have that on record. Thank you.
Thank you. Just briefly before we go on, can I remind speakers that when you finish speaking, please press the button again. We had instances there with 2 or 3 microphones on at the same time, and unfortunately that means it blocks it on the speakers, and people at the back may not be able to hear what's going on. Are there any further questions of the developer, please? In that case, Mr. Marks, thank you very much indeed for your time, and thank you for your appearance. Right, members, we now move into our debate stage. Is there anybody wishes to start the conversation relating to the proposal before you? Councillor Patrick.
I'm not going to talk about NDSS again. I think I've made that point already. I am pleased about the contribution towards Cemetery Park. I just want to say that that's a site that desperately needs some investment. It's a really important site in Exwick. It's very central. It's in desperate need of refurbishment. So that's one positive outcome from this development that I can see.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mitchell.
As most of us here didn't want this development in the first place. It's an interesting situation we find ourselves in. But in effect, we've got to work through the planning regulations. And an inspector has made a determination on this site. And all I'd like to do is congratulate the officers and the developer in coming to what is an acceptable development on this site. And particularly the issues of the hills around Exeter have done their best to mitigate, even if some of us might not be here in 15 years' time, to mitigate the situation that was of grave concern to people across Exeter. It wasn't just a matter of in Exwick, it was where this was seen across the city. As I say, it's just a sad state of affairs that it went to appeal. We did not win the appeal on the grounds that we thought were justified at that time. This is the best of a bad job, so I would hope that we would support this in its present format.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other contributions towards the debate? Here, okay, no need for summing up. Right. The proposal before you is that we accept the recommendation of the officers and agree to the reserve matters as outlined to you in the documents that you've had before you. I'm asking for a vote straight away on that, unless any members wish to propose any amendments to the motion as it stands. I'm waiting for a second. First of all, you're going to second that. Thank you, Councillor. I was just waiting to see if anybody was going to. Indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. All right. So it's seconded by Councillor Mitchell. In that case, by a simple show of hands, can you please indicate whether you accept this recommendation? First of all, any abstentions? Any against? Against. I have one against, but that is carried. Thank you very much for your attention to this matter. I'm just going to call for a 2-minute break. If anybody requires to visit the facilities or stretch their legs, we are at 18:19. I would like to resume no later than 25, please. It actually gives you 6 minutes, okay?
The shared land that needs some management. And then you get all this bits of wasteland that nobody claims. But it doesn't. I suppose it does tie you into management company and a fee. Yeah, it does. Yeah, there's a lot of it. Yeah, it's interesting.
And you then got no control.
Then you've got no control over what the fee is.
Or what it's spent on.
But your land is. Well, it depends on how it's done, because if it's, in a lot of places, you're agreed as like a kind of a stakeholder of that company. If it's within the company's defined within that.
Oh, yeah, if you've got a management body that's owned by the people who own the property.
There is an outstanding bill still lurking around to, right, they should have been done years ago, abolish leasehold. In which case they won't be able to be.
My daughter tried to go there because they could get off
common space and how that's managed, you know.
As opposed to.
No, I'm talking about donkey years ago. This.
Yes, please keep on.
You guys, you guys, you guys.
Where did you say you sleep? It's on the street. No, and they still you go the big problem kids play football on our new lovely little estate, older drive. There are three families, they have three levels, just up top of Green's Road, right behind St Nicholas' primary school. And they're coming out every morning, putting a football post out, or kicking the ball around. So their cars being damaged, I'm here to see the problem. It's a noise. You know, and the parents just swear to the house closers, basically. So, you know, what can we do about it? It won't be well, there's no play park on the site. It's small, and there's six the nearest play park is Market Park, which is plenty place, but parents don't want to lose sight of their children. They want them to see where they're playing.
Yes, and so did I. So that's got two separate. Members, if we could come to order, please. I believe everybody's back in the room. We would like to recommence, please. Thank you very much. We are at agenda item 6. This is the planning application 241195 VOC, a variation of conditions relating to the application, which has already been granted to land northeast of 371 Topsham Road, access to West of England School, Exeter. It's Oh yes, sorry, I must mention that we have received late apologies from Councillor Miller-Bohm. She has unfortunately been stuck the wrong side of a serious accident further south than us and is unable to get to us. Sorry, it's Councillor, it's Matt, yes, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application at land northeast of 371 Topsham Road. It's a Section 73 application to vary Condition 2 of Planning Permission 21/1676/full, which was for a golf driving range, and is to vary Condition 2 by changing the surface material of the car park from grasscrete or similar as specified on the approved site layout plan to recycled plastic cell gravel.
The other
Oh, sorry, sit down. So just as a reminder, this application was approved by the planning committee in June last year. This just shows the site location outlined in red. This is the aerial view. This indicates the site and shows that it is within Ludwell Valley Park. This is a photograph of the access before the development began. Looking back down along the access road. And this is a photograph of the site. And this is the approved site layout plan. If we zoom in, we can see that it is annotated that the car park would be constructed from grasscrete or a similar material. So the applicant wishes to change the material of the car park from grasscrete, as shown in the left image, to recycled plastic cell gravel, as shown in the right image. Because the new material isn't, in the view of officers, similar in appearance to grasscrete, that's why we asked for a new application to be submitted. The applicant has recently submitted an image showing a suggested colour as a dark material. This followed the publication of the officer report. And it's worth pointing out that the car park is located in the southwest corner of the field. And as was approved in the original application, it will be surrounded by new soft planting that will provide some screening in views from the nearby residential properties. And the car park will also be screened from long distance views from within the rest of Ludwell Valley Park by the new golf driving range building. These images were used in the presentation last year just to remind members that the site isn't very visible from the public areas of Ludwell Valley Park. So in this photograph, you won't be able to see the new building or the car park. From here, you would be able to see it possibly in winter views behind that tree. In this image, again, you might have a very small long distance view of it through the hedgerow. This is where the site is most visible from within the public accessible part of Ludwell Valley Park. But again, it would be some distance away and you wouldn't be able to see the car park in this view. So I'm not going to repeat what's in the officer report. We consider that the change of material is sustainable that it won't have a significant impact on the character or local distinctiveness of Ludwell Valley Park. Therefore, we recommend approval, subject to the conditions as set out in the update sheet. This includes a new condition requiring the specification and colour of the new surface material to be approved by officers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. Okay, I'm now looking for questions to the officer. I'm starting off with Councillor Hughes, then Councillor Ketchen, then Councillor.
Thank you, Officer Diamond. Would you mind just going back to the picture of the grasscrete compared to the? Yes, thank you. So, and I'm really sorry, I'm going to sound really ignorant, but I don't have any experience in landscaping. That grasscrete, would that grass need to be like cut or anything? Is there any sort of maintenance that would be required of the grasscrete? Is there any, like, would somebody have to cut it? Will it grow? Will all sorts of other things grow in it? Or is it just grass?
I don't know for sure. I'm not an expert at grasscrete, I'm afraid. I imagine if it got very long, it would need to be mowed like any other grass. But I think if you read the statement that was submitted with the application, the applicant considers that grasscrete isn't a fantastic product because in periods of heavy rainfall, the pockets where the soil is can be washed out and then the rain will overflow. And of course, concrete isn't a permeable material. So it's considered negative in terms of leading to possible runoff. And secondly, in periods of very hot weather, as we're experiencing more and more these days, the concrete can heat up and dry out the soil. So what's been put forward by the applicant, the golf club, is, and this has been experienced at their main golf course, according to the application, is that the grasscrete doesn't function particularly well and can end up looking very patchy and dry. So,
but presumably bugs and things would live in the grass that wouldn't be able to live in recycled plastic. From a biodiversity perspective, there will be little creepy crawlies and worms and things.
well, there'd be worms in the soil underneath the recycled plastic cell gravel, just as much as it would be under the grasscrete. In terms of insects, we're just talking about normal grass, not meadow grass or things that are going to be particularly ecologically valuable. See, the original application included a landscape and ecological management plan showing extensive new planting as part of the main proposal, which you can see in the planting plan, so I can get the arrows the right way around this time. Which I clearly am not. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so the original application included extensive new tree planting and other planting as well. So I don't think we can criticise the golf club in terms of biodiversity net gain.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just wanted to clarify. As I say, I don't know anything about this stuff. So
Thank you. Councillor Ketchen.
Just quick clarification on Zoe's point. It won't need mowing because the traffic on it will suppress the growth. So it just tends to stay short. I wasn't sure about the product. If we could just get clarification, it's recycled plastic cell and whatnot. Is the gravel recycled plastic pellets? Or is it just the cells that are the structure to hold the gravel in? Because that makes a big difference in my mind as to how sustainable a product this is. Could you clarify?
That level of detail isn't set out in the application, but it's something that you could ask the speaker in favour from the golf club. From what I've read, the cellular plastic grid uses recycled materials. In terms of the gravel itself, I've not seen detail as to whether gravel is recycled or not.
And my second question was, I don't understand, we've often as a planning committee, it's quite clear what our remit is and where we can approve and object things on. I'm not quite sure with this one. It's a bit of a quirky one as to if we were to say not approve this, what are the sort of grounds? It doesn't sort of fit with me into sort of your national planning policy framework type of remit. So I'm very unclear as to what our remit is with regard to this particular application.
I've set out the key planning issues in the committee report. So it comes down to whether the new material visually will harm the character and local distinctiveness of Ludwell Valley Park. There are also some environmental issues, such as how well it will perform in terms of sustainable drainage, which, to be honest, it will perform exactly the same as grasscrete because it will be a permeable material. There were a few objections to the application, and in particular, the issue of noise was raised. Again, I've set out our views as officers in the committee report on that issue. And that's about it.
Thank you. Councillor Atkinson next.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the report does address noise, visuals and landscape design. What it doesn't do is address the issue of what happens to these plastics when they break down over time. So, for instance, what Councillor Ketchin has said is that they will break down because they're into microplastics. And given that elsewhere in the report it says this is already contaminated land, do we know what the contaminants are? Is there any report which says what the effect of contaminants already there would have if the plastics actually migrated into the soil? So I don't think we've had enough information about that, the effects on the environment as such. In terms of pollution, in order to justify, I'll say it later, but I can't see that we've had any clear indication in that. You've only addressed noise, landscaping and visuals. So is there a report, an ecological report, addressing the nature of these products and how they break down in the environment, in particular how they break down when impacted by the contaminated land that's already there?
No. For a Section 73 application, we don't require ecology reports. The issue of ecology was dealt with in the original application, and in terms of the new material and its environmental credentials, we don't have I would say policy basis to require a ecology report just for a specific material. It's not something we'd normally ask for a planning application.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to Councillor Mitchell. No, yes, Mitchell next. Yes, and then
Thank you, Chair. Just really following on Councillor Atkinson in a way, we're talking about the surface of a car parking area. Right? Got that in the head. I can understand why grass cape might appear attractive to a golf-linked facility as the greenery is continued. What I can't understand is why we have moved from the grass cape to this recycled material, which might have questionable long-term effects on the area. Why have not more traditional coverings been considered or rejected, and why have they been rejected, and why have we gone to this particular option? Is it something we've imposed upon them or something they've decided? And what's the rationale as distinct from every other house that would use different and natural materials?
Well, we're the planning authority. We don't decide how we want something to be built. We assess whether what the developer wants to build is compliant with our planning policy. So there's been no negotiation. This is something that the developer wishes to do, and they've submitted an application, and we're judging it against our policies.
So have other applications that have involved this material in the past? Have we any history with this material?
The supporting statement states that this same material is used at the existing golf driving range off Exeter Road.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Patrick.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. So just to confirm, obviously this is an application to change this particular product on the car park. So if this application were refused, then then it would just revert back to the original application condition, which was for the grasscrete. So this, yeah, just want to confirm that.
The approved plan for the original application states grasscrete or similar.
Or similar. So yeah, okay. So it would have to be similar visually to the left-hand picture, or they would have to come back with another application. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Councillor Paul.
So it seems like there's sort of two different things going on here. One, if you look into the bottom right-hand corner of the recycled plastic cell gravel, so the sort of base structure on the right is plastic cells as opposed to concrete cells on the left. And then the sort of infill material is the sort of plastic material instead of the grass. But hypothetically, you could have the grass on the recycled plastic cells, or you could have the gravel on the concrete cells on the left. So there's sort of two different things going on here. So I just wonder whether or not, the sort of the plastic cells on the right, with grass might sort of. I know that's not the proposal in front of us, but I think that could have been an option. Could have been an option to put grass into the cells on the right instead of the plastic, or put the plastic into the concrete cells on the left. So I don't know if the officers have got. I believe that you could grow grass in either one. Is that correct?
So before the officer answers, I really don't follow that argument. They are two different products. The point about the grasscrete is that the pockets are quite large. They contain material that would support the growth of grass, and then the length of the grass is maintained by the passage of vehicles. On the right-hand side, my understanding from reading this is that the only plastic part of it is the pockets that hold the gravel, and then it is natural gravel. In other words, it's a fully permeable surface that the water goes through, and insects and bugs and worms and everything else can live in perfect harmony with the vehicles going over the top.
It's not rubbery gravel.
As far as I am aware, but I think that these are not questions for an officer. I think these are questions to be directed to the developer and the applicant, and so that we can perhaps
Thank
get,
you, Chair.
rather than my conjecture as well, which is unfounded or not backed up by and yours. So perhaps that could be clearer later on. And we got any other questions from our members before? Okay. Right, okay, I'm now calling speaker under Standing Order 44, the councillor for the ward, Councillor Wardle. Councillor Wardle, I'm sure you're very familiar with the system of pushing the button and speaking. You have no time limit, but I would ask you to be as brief and concise as you can be.
Thank you, Chair. Is that okay? Thank you. Well, good evening, councillors. Well, those of you who are on this committee when this application was originally determined will know that it was very strongly opposed. There were lots of people present at the planning committee meeting on that occasion. those of us in the ward had been receiving emails at least daily for weeks, sometimes several emails daily for weeks. And so you know the strength of feeling. Some of those objectors were going to be here this evening. Unfortunately, circumstances have conspired to prevent them being here, but I'm here to sort of try and articulate their views. Really based upon two of the key issues identified in the paperwork on 16.0 on page 48. One is the impact of the change on the character and local distinctiveness of Ludwell Valley Park, and 3 relating to the noise. Now, in relation to the Ludwell Valley Park, I just refer you to the quote from the master plan on page 42 of these papers, which says, "This landscape has a strong sense of place and an overriding spontaneous affinity with farmland, rolling fields and hedgerows, and a rural look." So that's the kind of context in which to consider this application to revise for a revision from the originally allowed Grasscrete. From the viewpoint of the people that live there, now have a sort of look from that. They feel really that it's an oasis of calm, in a built-up area. It's very much in danger of encroachment. This change is just one of those little changes that's added to what they've had to put up with over the years, has a cumulative effect upon their enjoyment of the area. So I'd like you to consider it against that side, that kind of thing. In relation to the noise question, which is on page 50, in number 3, it is said here, I think, that is considered acceptable regarding noise impacts. Well, I would ask you members to consider the effects. What are the of vehicles on gravel, however sort of contained, whatever colour the gravel is greater than having it grass on its own. So I don't think the residents really buy that argument. It might be considered acceptable, but from their viewpoint, it isn't acceptable. So there's no reason given, by the way, for this application being made. I don't know what it is at all, but I just ask you to stick with the original decision of the planning committee for Grasscrete not to amend it to what this application is requesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I invite questions to the Councillor? Councillor Patrick.
Thank you, Councillor. I wasn't on the planning committee when this first came up. You were a member of that committee. Was this car park material discussed at any length in that committee meeting?
Not to my knowledge. Oh, sorry, not according to my memory. I can't recall it being particularly discussed. Something called Grasscrete seemed to be very acceptable at that time. I think if there'd been an application made, as there is one now, I think there would have been a lot more questions asked about this. As Councillor Atkinson has referred to, there's the question as to how green this stuff is. Is it really recycled? I don't know.
Please, briefly, yes.
So the condition for the Grasscrete was already in place at that committee, and that's So okay, thank you.
Just before I was chair of this meeting, and my recollection is that the original proposal was for tarmac, and they had been discussing with officers, and as a consequence of discussions before it came to committee, the material was proposed as Grasscrete, which was more sort of acceptable in terms of water runoff and use. But that was my recollection of the meeting. Councillor Mitchell, first of all, and Councillor Kent.
recall my recollection as well as not so much as yours, the depth you had. The concern was on the general principle of the development at that particular stage, without itemising down to what car park was going to be like. It was more the principle of development on the site that both residents and some members of the committee felt was an issue. But considering what you said, Councillor Wardle, are you saying even though in principle residents don't welcome this development, that they would be content with the grasskeep remaining rather than this new recycled material?
Well, I mean, I think they've accepted the original decision, so and are happy with that and not with this amendment.
Councillor Ketch.
It was the same question as Mike asked.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I ask any other councillors wish to have questions for Councillor Wardle? No, I'm not seeing it. Councillor, thank you very much indeed for your attendance. Right, I'm now moving on to speakers from the gallery. This is a speaker in support. It's I call Mr. Peter Lacey.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Lacey, I'm sure you're also familiar with the system where you push the button to speak. You have 3 minutes. You can start as you wish.
Either, but the right-hand one is the one we normally use. Not either. Well, I'm sure you say good evening. Sorry, pressing that. Oh, really? I'll limit my comments to the points raised in the public objections. In respect of the weather, the impact of the extremes of weather over the last few years has forced the club to review its approach to climate change and grounds management. There is no expectation that the weather events experienced in recent years will get better. The last few weeks certainly offers a wake-up call. It was necessary this and last year to close parts or all of the golf course more frequently than before. Due to rain-sodden grass surfaces, we have just spent 124,000 on land drainage works in an area which did not fully dry out till June and was previously playable all year round. The ring-bound gravel surface option. When our application was made in 2021, these weather extremes were not so evident and grasscrete was offered as a surfacing material. We no longer consider any form of surfacing incorporating grass suitable in areas of vehicular movement. We are not alone. In their 2014 design guide for car parks, National Trust refer in a trial of a product similar to grasscrete, I quote, "The sand soil mix for the grass medium is very porous and rain washes the nutrients out very quickly, so the grass is struggling to grow," unquote. Heat retaining concrete further damages grass through drying out of the soil pockets. As a result, the National Trust has since widely adopted ring-bound gravel as a reliable and sustainable option. As to setting an impact, gravel is often used in rural locations. Access ways are frequently constructed with locally sourced stone material. We claim that the use of gravel is compatible with the farm building design language used at the driving range. The urban design and landscape officer presumably considered gravel does not adversely impact on the setting of the Valley Park when offering no objections to the application. It is our intention that a local darker stone, as you've seen, is used to that shown in the images taken from the product brochure within the application. Noise. The noise arising from gravel has been overstated. The distance from the nearest point of the car park to the closest dwelling is approximately 40 meters. The far side of the car park is a further 40 meters away. Adjacent to Tollard's road boundary, there will be a 15-meter wide tree belt which will provide visual and sound screening. Gravel ring construction is specifically designed to stop the movement of gravel which might otherwise cause rutting of the surface and grating of the aggregate. Additionally, cars that will be approaching will do so at low speed and relatively small numbers even at peak periods. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. David. Mr. Lacey, I'll just I'm going to ask some questions first, and then I shall let you in order. Yes, you first, Councillor Ketchum. But you just used the word locally sourced, referring to the gravel. Can you confirm that it's your intention to use a locally sourced stone for this, or whether that's up to the contractor?
Much of the very locally sourced material is of relatively light colour, and it doesn't meet the criteria of darker gravels. The gravels recommended, which you saw on the screen, are from Lee Moor near Plimpton. So local, at least, in the sense of Devon.
If you just switch off your speaker.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, and my supplementary to that is you're referring to this as recycled plastic. Can you confirm that the ring that holds the gravel is genuinely recycled plastic and not just a nomenclature?
I can only refer to the sales information and brochure, which uses recycled plastic. And I would have to say other companies who offer a similar product also use recycled plastic. I can't imagine, although it's possible, that they would advertise it so strongly if that statement was proved to be incorrect.
Councillor Ketchum?
So I think we're very clear now that the recycled element is the plastic. The plastic is only the cells, and it's stone gravel, unequivocally, that is the sort of potentially mobile part that was a bit of rub. So the question about microplastics in the soil, I think me and Yvonne were talking about, is sort of mitigated. So that's very helpful. Thank you. I think you're nodding. Yeah, so just an agreement. Yeah, absolutely.
Indeed, you're right.
Good. Okay. So just to sort of go on further then, I think the original question, I think maybe the council up the top was Liz maybe was talking about was whether this is a green area, a grassed area, or whether this is a gravelled area. And have you considered the advantages of the plastic cells, where they're more porous, better contact with moisture, there's less heating of the plastic versus grass, the concrete element of grasscrete? Have you looked into basically planting up the recycled plastic, which has these advantages of better water retention, better contact with the soil below? Have you looked into that, which would then sort of remove the issue of losing this green space? That would obviously then fit with the original planning given, which was grasscrete or similar product.
Can I deal firstly with grasscrete, and I'll come on to the gravel boundarings as well. The grasscrete that you see before you on the screen is obviously showing young, fresh grass coming through. Traffic running over it is going to affect that significantly. But for me, the biggest problem associated with grasscrete is the weather. It has demonstrably got worse, and the records that have shown over the last 2 years are evidence of that from the Met Office. And if you can imagine each of those elements that you see there, let's say they're that size, half of the surface is concrete, half is the soil plug. Imagine 25 inches of rain in a single day coming down on that. It can't penetrate the concrete, it can penetrate the grass plug. So you get, in essence, the impact of 50 millimeters of rain instead of 25 millimeters of rain, twice the amount. The material of grass, and if the grass dies back, what you will be seeing is concrete, not grass, or at best dead grass. Yes, one would hope that it will come back again, but the design guide from the National Trust is very specific in saying that that type of material is not suitable in current climatic conditions and the rainfall we're getting now. As to the ring, grass can go in it, yes. But again, we're talking about traffic going over it on a constant basis, or at least a regular basis. And the notion that this is a green space is only something that can be evidenced by being in the space. People from outside are not going to see it. You've already demonstrated that the site is really just part of the corner of a very much larger field. And it's absolutely contained by an enormous amount of additional planting, for which the ecological value is significantly greater than anything that is asked for in developments to date. All of that was, of course, covered in the original application. Have I answered your question?
Not quite. I think the issue of it being concrete, I understand it's bulky, it's half the surface, it heats up, it dries out, and then the grass gets flooded as well. So it's a sort of worst of both worlds. I happen to have the right-hand product on my drive filled with grass, and it works very well. And that's why I brought it up. So I would encourage you to consider it as a viable option.
As I mentioned to you in my presentation, we have just spent a great deal of money on removing moisture from the ground and getting grass that will grow effectively. But we don't believe, and our groundsmen don't believe, that we can get an effective use of this type of structure underneath, the plastic structure, with grass planted in it. It's just not on.
It's just not my experience either. And I live a mile from your site, and yet on my drive, the grass and the plastic product works. And I'm not sure what the difference will be. So I don't agree with you.
Okay, we will agree to disagree, but of course the quantum of space, of the area of the product, plus again the quantum of use, is I suspect very different. The other thing which is worth mentioning, with the grass, what would happen is the grass would come to the top of the plastic, whereas the gravel comes to the top of the plastic and goes above. So what you would be seeing is the actual plastic pockets. When you said the same, you actually mean that product or something similar? And does the grass show the rings underneath?
If you fill the right-hand product up with soil and grass, what you get is a largely grass effect with, you can see a matrix of the plastic, but you get a very nice grass effect, and it's very attractive.
I understand what you're saying, Councillor Ketchum, but I am going to draw a close to this. That's not really part of our discussion here, but I understand you've expressed an opinion. I'm going to go in order that I've received, which is Councillor Hughes, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I've listened to you talking about how the weather has impacted on opening hours and being able to open the course somewhere else. And I'm just a bit confused how changing the car park to gravel is going to benefit the golf course as a whole when the golf course is made out of grass. So if the weather is so inclement that the car park would be adversely impacted, my confusion lies, surely the entire playing surface would be impacted, therefore, if the weather's that bad.
I agree. It would be if it weren't for the fact that we have a significant amount of land drainage in those areas to ensure that they're not. I mean, the £124,000 was on one single hole, fairway and hole at Exeter, which was constructed and finished only a couple of months ago. And that area last year, I said it took until June to dry out. You could walk on it and it was doing this. So that was an area of particular concern, and one of the factors of a number of factors that drew us to a conclusion that grasscrete is just not suitable. The other thing I might mention of Grasscrete, the National Trust used the ring system and particularly applaud its use with disabled wheelchairs and for walking on. Grasscrete has its problems, and you can imagine what they might be.
Thank you very much. My next speaker, Councillor Svashin. And then,
I don't think you saw my hand. Chair.
okay, well,
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. So obviously I was on the committee when this came last time. And obviously you originally wanted to use tarmac and then we changed it.
I'm sorry,
It got
didn't.
That
is
changed.
incorrect.
Then it got changed before you came to the committee. And I think we made actually quite a big thing about having the Grasscrete because it fits in with the Valley Park that surrounds it, despite the fact that it's only, as you say, a tiny piece. I understand what you say about the grass dying back and looking dead, but that will also fit in nicely with the local Valley Park because that's grass and will also look dead if the weather's bad. I have done quite a lot of research into Grasscrete and various other surfaces, which I never thought was something I would do as a councillor. And I can't really see why you would have changed it. The Grasscrete seems to me to be in keeping with the surrounding area. The noise levels will be quieter. And there's some confusion because you said that there's not going to be very many cars going over it, so the gravel won't make much noise. But then you also said that there will be a lot of cars going over it, and that will make it messy. So I'm not quite sure which it is. And I think that's just about all of it at the moment. Thank you.
If I could answer that, I've got this written down, so I hope you'll allow me to read it. And it's referring to the UK climate. In common with the rest of the world, it's becoming more extreme. In the last 18 months, we had experience of a heat wave lasting 7 days in September 2023, and the wettest September recorded since 1918. We also had a heat wave in July 2022 and extremely heavy rain between January and May this year. In 2022, the hottest day ever was recorded. It is predicted that by 2070, chances of exceeding 30 centigrade for 2 days or more, which is a heat wave, over southern parts of the UK becomes 16 times more likely than today. Which is why we think concrete, which is not a particularly sustainable material anyway, is completely inappropriate for that set of conditions.
Right, okay, I'm going to let you come back. I'm just going to remind all members that obviously I'm expecting questions of the speaker based on his presentation. We will, of course, be going into our own debate stage later. Councillor Smash.
Thank you. Just to come back on that point, the concrete, its lifespan for this Grasscrete is apparently indefinite. So, but thank you for the lesson on temperatures.
Councillor Atkinson.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of questions. You heard what I said earlier. And unlike Councillor Ketching, I'm still not convinced about the environmental impact or non-effect on environment of this, because it is recycled plastic, which itself will deteriorate. And you've just described the perfect conditions which will accelerate deterioration of plastic, hot, dry conditions and wet conditions, and they will release microplastics into the soil. And perhaps you could address what evidence you have of any of that and what effect it could have with the already contaminated land that's in there. And you kept using, well, the evidence is blah, 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 but I actually didn't hear any evidence. So perhaps you could tell us the scientific evidence in particular about, and let's come to talk about grass. I mean, I'm quite familiar with grass, and every year the grass dies, and it rains and it comes back. I mean, that's what happens to grass. It gives out its seeds, it dies, it comes back. And, you know, so many robust kinds of grass that are drought available, you know, in Mediterranean. So, you know, the idea that this is, you know, frankly, I find completely untenable that we couldn't possibly have grass on concrete that wouldn't regenerate, given the varieties of grass that exist nationally. So I find that argument, you know, frankly spurious. If you could tell me the evidence of that, would be pleased. And then there's the other thing, you're putting gravel on this. Now, I don't know, Councillor, I have actually experience of that kind of thing. And what happens is you get weeds coming up through the gravel. And very annoying, these weeds. So how are you going to treat those weeds? Are you going to put glyphosate on them, some horrible weed killer? Or are you going to manually pull them up? You know, in which case, wouldn't it be better to actually have the grass, have it die down, and then come back, and you could maintain it much better. And then I think if you look at that and you imagine a whole load of weeds on it, it's going to look actually shocking in fairly quickly. And you know, you've seen this, but you know, let's have a look at it in 5 years with no treatment on it, unless you're going to put weed killer on it. So I'm just, you know, you keep saying evidence, but I don't think you found any evidence to support any of your arguments before us.
Right. It will probably help you if I describe what the construction is of grasscrete. Grasscrete has to be bedded on a very thick, probably in the region of 250 or 300 millimeters of gravel hogging as a base to give it structure. On top of that goes a series of formers at the distances you see there of the grass pockets. It's then concrete poured into it, and then the formers plastic is burnt off, so that the pocket can be created. So the grass that you get in those pockets, which is why that statement which I quoted from National Trust was made, is only the thickness of the concrete. And there is no grass, there is no soil underneath. So to compare it with a general grass area is completely wrong. And yes, I agree with you, concrete lasts forever. And so do most other things that are used for this sort of car park. But we don't want it there to look forever without the grass, because it'll just look like concrete with soil between it. Coming back to the plastic, I have no evidence. I cannot tell you whether the plastic will break down. I rely entirely on the fact that the National Trust are using this in virtually all of their car parks. Now, I don't know to what extent you respect the National Trust, but for the most part, it is made up of members who are very caring and have interests in things that you've been talking about. I'm sure there would be an outcry if there was something fundamentally wrong with the plastic cell and gravel system.
With respect, that isn't an issue that will go for National Trust members. I'm a member myself. I've never been asked about that. That would be a matter for the local planning authorities. I'm not members, so.
Again, if I can ask members to stick to questions to these, I'll come to you soon. Yes, next, Councillor Mitchell.
Can I first of all thank you for the clarity of your presentation so far, because you clarified a lot of issues for me in regard to what is happening here. So could you just cover a couple of points which you might be able to, which I think members have raised in different ways. What is the lifespan of this gravel rings system? Has it got a lifespan as such? Because as you explained, concrete just goes on and on. That thing. Could you explain? I know it was possibly it was in the initial application, which was now some time ago, the number of vehicles using this site per day, because I think there's slightly more than would use Councillor Ketchen's drive in a day, and impact that will have on the grass. Also, in regard to this system of using natural gravel in this system, can you explain the natural drainage that would exist or does exist? Because clearly there are drainage issues with the concrete, in particular with the weather we're having, and it would seem that you're trying to overcome that with this new system. And lastly, is there any problem in the removal of gravel by vehicles off-site? Because you often get this with traffic moving, you suddenly get a trail of gravel being straight up the road and whatever. And I just wonder if there's anything within the system that prevents that, because that would be an annoyance to neighbours, I would have thought. So if you cover those points, I'll be most grateful.
Yes, if I can answer the last one first. I don't really know, save for the fact that the aggregate near the top is sort of between 6 and 14 millimeters, which is not, I suspect, the size that would easily stick within the tread of most cars. But I can't answer that with any real confidence. As to the number of vehicles, we did do a study of the existing facility, and we had about 13,000 users last year, which averages out at roughly 7 to 8 persons in any single hour. So
vehicles.
That's people, but of course mostly they will be coming as individuals in the car on their own. So I can't give you the actual numbers, but that was certainly the experience we had that year.
And the drainage? That was an issue
The drainage is exactly the same for both. Both of them have this underlying hogging stone base, on top of which you see the two constructions. So pretty much the drainage away from the site is exactly the same for both.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next on my list, I have Councillor Paul.
Yes, thanks for your presentation and your detailed answers. So have you made an assessment of the relative cost per metre of these two solutions?
Without a shadow of a doubt, the gravel is cheaper, but I don't see that as the issue here. I see the issue here as being the inappropriateness of grasscrete compared to gravel, given the conditions that we are now aware of, and given the conditions that we've had to deal with at the existing golf course.
And how many square metres are we talking about for the area to be?
We're talking about an area 40 metres long by 16.5 metres wide. I leave you to work that out because I don't know the answer.
40 metres by 16 and a half.
40 metres by 16.5.
Again, can I ask you just to press your button again?
Hmm?
Can you silence your button? Thank you very much indeed. Last call for questions from members to the speaker, Councillor Banyard.
Thank you for coming this evening, answering our questions. So you agree that the drainage would be the same with both of these systems, and one worry was that the grass would die back and it would look unsightly. And I would agree with the changing climate we're having. Some of our more traditional plants don't do as well in hot and dry conditions in the summer. Would you be amenable to perhaps some other kind of green planting within the grasscrete, so perhaps more hardy, moving away from grass, but things like thyme or so hard herbs? I'm not an expert in that kind of planting, but there are other things.
The answer is no.
Okay. So it's grass or no grass?
We've, for the reasons I've stated, wished to use the plastic cell and gravel. We don't really think that any of the other options really deal with the dampness, the wetness, the heat that we've talked about. And it's for that reason that we've chosen, not the cost. And I know there will be some smirks around the table, I've no doubt, but that is not the reason we're doing it.
Thank you, Mr. Lacey. Again, are there any other members wish to raise new points? In that case, Mr. Lacey, thank you very much indeed for spending your time with us. We will now move into debate. You may stay and view if you wish. All right, okay, so I am now opening this to debate and I'm going straight to Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. So I've been listening to everybody and I can see that there are a number of issues that could lead to death by 1,000 cuts for the residents who live around the golf course. So with that in mind, I understand what officers are saying, that the noise level is considered acceptable, that, but I think we need to take into account how residents feel about that. I think gravel sounds horrible. Personally, it sounds horrible. I don't feel that weather is a strong enough argument, given that it's a golf course. So if we have really bad weather, it's going to impact the playing surface. So I don't feel like that's a strong enough argument as well. And I think the comparison of a relatively small golf course in Exeter to the entirety of the National Trust is also slightly tenuous link, because obviously the car parks associated with the National Trust will get a lot more traffic. I feel that we haven't received enough of a convincing argument to get rid of the grass. It sounds like the grass was quite an important part of the original application. So I have to say, I'm not convinced that this is an acceptable change. Irrespective of the cost, I just don't feel that I don't feel the argument is strong enough to make the change. That's.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Ketch.
Wow, what a heated debate over what is a relatively small issue, but it just shows how far we've come as a group of political people to show passion for the environment, which I think is what it comes down to. And hats off to Exeter Topsham Golf Club for all their work in trying to mitigate the effects of climate change as well. There's a couple of issues just before we get lost in this, that, as I remember, we're talking about two different sites. This is not Exeter Golf Club. This is the driving range. As I remember, it even may have a AstroTurf type surface to collect the balls off. It's not a grass surface. It's a surrounding area that's going to be greened. So we're not comparing a golf course. It's a driving range, so slightly different thing. To me, they have already got a planning permission to put in grasscrete or similar. And so to me, the similar, or the material element of the similar, if I've got this right, is it doesn't have to be grasscrete. It could be another base with similar drainage and all those issues managed, but another base that manages a green surface. And that was what I was trying to allude to earlier. And it doesn't sound like another surface has been considered, but it's being stated that grasscrete is a problem. And I think that was explained very well. I heard, we know that concrete's got lots of embodied CO2 emissions, all the rest of it. So, we're really getting into the deep stuff of understanding some of the technical issues around climate change on what is a very small element. It's unusual to get this intensity. To me, this sort of comes down to is there is what I've not seen is a real exploration of the other surfaces that are available under the planning. And there's this fixation with the grasscrete. It doesn't have to be grasscrete.
That's not the original application, as I understand it. It was a green surface, so grasscrete or similar. So I think if there'd been a good exploration of similar, i.e., maybe a surface similar to mine or something of that nature, I'd have a lot more sympathy. But I like the sound of gravel, actually, cars and gravel. So I'm not going to vote that on away. But I don't like having to walk over gravel or drive over gravel that's been knocked all over the road. And I don't know many people that have gravel driveways where they don't spill the gravel onto the road adjacent. And also this has been sold as gravel sitting on top of this plastic modular sort of cells, but with a nice sprinkling on top. It's just not going to be contained. And any vision, whatever it was certainly not of gravel below the surface of the cells with the plastic matrix showing. It was very much sold as it was. So I think we all know that the gravel is going to spill down the road. That would certainly be one of my nuisance factors if I was one of the residents. So I just think alternatives haven't been as explored as they might. And if they were to be, I'd be much more supportive of a change away from grasscrete. But I don't think the original planning is solely grasscrete. It's for a grassy, organic surface. And I think that's why I'll not be supporting the change.
Okay, Councillor Fashion.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to follow on probably from Councillor Ketchin's point about spreading the gravel, and there's also the noise that comes with it. I know that the golf club pointed out that a couple of the residents around there have gravel driveways, but they're only going on and off. This will include cars turning, and I didn't get a clear answer as to how many cars would be coming on and off. I suppose nobody really knows that yet. But it will make noise, and as Councillor Ketchin said, it will lead to messiness. And I just think, as it's so close to the Valley Park, we should be looking at something, as you said, more organic. And I will be wanting to stick with the grasscrete or similar. Thank you.
Councillor Patrick.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, actually, I want to echo Councillor Ketchin's comments about the product. You're right. There is some wriggle room to have different products apart from grasscrete, as long as they have the same effect. And I've been doing a little bit of Googling, and there are products similar to the ones that Councillor Ketchin was talking about, something called grass pay, for example. Perhaps it doesn't have the cost advantages of the product on the right, but it would meet the condition that has already been set. And so yes, I agree with Councillor Ketchin on that note.
Thank you, Councillor Paul.
Yeah, I just wanted to pay attention to the comments that were made about the disability problems with the concrete. So yeah, it seems to me that the plastic matting might, combined with the grass, might be preferable in a way. And I just again also sort of minded in that direction. So I just wonder whether or not would it need to be a sort of delegated matter with the officer's chair to sort of vary the existing permission for grasscrete or similar to put down the hard plastic matting instead of the concrete matting, or would if not, would it be possible to put that forward as a sort of recommendation to be a delegated matter for the officers to vary it to be the plastic matting, if that's something that with the grass, if that's something that the applicant wanted to explore?
Before inviting a comment from the officer, I am going to make a point about the planning committee. So what you have before you is this application. If before we come to a vote on this, somebody wishes to propose an alternative motion, then we would then discuss that. But I believe that that's where we are at the moment. But I'll just wonder if any officer wants to make a comment, director or an officer.
Sorry, answering your question just now, Councillor Pole, I don't think any further application would be necessary to, if the golf club wanted to propose a new material that was similar to Grasscrete but utilised a recycled plastic cell base. In my eyes, that comes under the similar as specified on the plans. So they could do that if they so wished. Obviously, what they want to do is use gravel, and that's why this application has been submitted, because we as officers didn't consider that had a similar appearance to Grasscrete, quite obviously, when you look at the images. But obviously, we're here to assess the application this evening in terms of whether recycled plastic cell gravel is acceptable or not in planning terms.
Thank you, Matt. Before I make my contribution as a member, I understand Councillor Hughes has a point of information or clarity.
Yeah, I think it might be a point of information, I'm not sure. Just regarding Councillor Pole's comments about accessibility, gravel is notoriously inaccessible if you are a wheelchair user anyway. So I just wanted to make that point. Gravel is not very accessible as a medium for people with mobility issues or people using wheelchairs.
Okay, thank you. If you don't mind, I'd like to make a contribution. So first of all, I'm looking at these two pictures. Even in the state that it's in, I don't find the Grasscrete aesthetically wonderful. I am very concerned about the embedded carbon that is in the concrete, which is 50% of the surface. And the underlying area is the same specific drainage-friendly material on both systems. The system on the right, to me, is actually quite attractive. It's a car park. It's a 26-place car park. It's a tiny part of a fairly large green space. I'll also speak a little bit about the microplastic, the plastics, not microplastic, the plastics involved in that it is recycled plastic. Comments about the accessibility of it. We're now going back to the National Trust, which I know is not part of this, but I visit the National Trust on a regular basis. I used to take my father there on a regular basis. He was wheelchair bound, and the car park itself is fine. Okay, what happens is these cells sit there with the gravel inside them, and although the gravel is slightly proud of the top, when you're driving or pushing, in my case, the wheelchair over, it doesn't run through, and there wasn't actually very much migration away from it. It was the immediate half meter before you got into the car park for it. But we're not talking about the National Trust. We are talking about this particular golf course, and I'm going to speak a little bit as a golfer. There's a huge difference between a golf course and a driving range. And with a driving range, you come up in your car, you get the clubs out the back, usually only a couple of them. You walk to the building, you pop a few balls off, and then you walk away again. And the course goes and collects these range-specific balls using either mechanical or actual means. So it's not going to affect the actual visual impact on the valley itself. For me, looking at these two, I actually prefer the recycled plastic cell gravel. I think that it will drain better, and I think that it will serve the purpose better than a concrete. So that's going to be my standpoint as a member of the committee. I'm just asking, is there anybody else wishing to make any further contributions to the debate? Obviously, there was a possibility that we would have some sort of amendment to our resolution before us. Is there anybody wishing to come up with wording for an alternative? No, I'm not seeing anybody willing to do that. So therefore, I am proposing the recommendation as it is, that we accept the officer's recommendation and we permit them to move to things there. Do I have a seconder for that? I have a seconder in Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Paul, were you?
I was just offering to second.
You were offering to second, were you? Right. I have an embarrassment of seconders. Thank you very much indeed. Do you want to make a point? No, right. Okay, so we are now at the stage where we wish to make, or we need to make a vote. I want a clear indication of hands, please, of those in favour of the recommendation. Make that three. Three. Can I have a clear indication of those against, please? 8. And do we have any abstentions, please? Right, okay. So it's been defeated. I'm going to. Yes. So, yeah. Right. So what we are at now is we have to, because we have to work on a reasonable basis, we have to come up with a reason to supply our officers for this based on planning regulations. So can I ask if anybody wishes to propose a wording of this reason? Yeah, okay, so what I'm going to ask you for is those who are opposed just to come up with a summary point, and then the officers will then coordinate those into a phrasing. Okay, so start off with you, Councillor Hugh.
So from my perspective, if we just look at page 48, I don't feel that we have received enough information to satisfy key issues number 1 and key issue number 3. So that's the impact of the change in the character and local distinctiveness of Blackwell Valley Park and the noise. I'm unsure about point 4, sustainable construction, because I don't know enough about the materials, but it doesn't feel very sustainable.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else wish to come on? Councillor Jobson, and then Councillor Patrick, and Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I think it's because the condition was for a grass-based system. This is not a grass-based system. Indeed, the officers actually suggested an alternative grass-based system that would have used the plastic. So it is very dissimilar to what the condition was. For that reason, when there are alternatives that would result in a grass-based system, they should be considered, and they haven't been.
Right. Okay. So, can you phrase that in a way that would?
Can I just sorry, Chair. So what we need the committee members to do is say explicitly what the reasons are for not supporting the proposed system, and you don't need to say that in detail. Just give us the core issue. So at the moment,
the bullet point would be, yeah. I would think that it is the condition provided for a grass-based parking system called grasscrete or similar. Similar implies that there should be a grass-based system. This is not a grass-based system, and therefore does not comply with the condition, and is not as sympathetic to the Ludwell Valley Park as a grass-based system would be. I think that's.
If I can just suggest just on that what you have in front of you is an application to vary the current conditions. So it's not that the issue in itself is not that it's variable. It's that you're unhappy with an impact. The impact that you're saying there is the visual appearance on the Ludwell Valley Park. Just to be clear.
That is an issue. The other issue is that the original condition was for a grass-based system. This is not a grass-based system or anything similar to a grass-based system that's being proposed.
I think
you clearly looking at it. I mean, perhaps the.
I think I see where you're both coming from here.
Yeah.
So basically, you almost have to pretend that that condition didn't exist in the first place, and you're treating this like a new application about a condition. So I don't think we can refuse this just because we don't like the fact that they're changing something. You have to look at it in its own for its own merits. So from my perspective, it's the impact of the changing character. It's the fact that it's in Ludwell Valley Park, and that it's not in keeping with the character of Ludwell Valley Park because it's not grass. If that makes sense.
I'll speak up. When we started this, before we got into it all, and I thought it might go a bit this way, I sort of asked, on what grounds this has been brought before us, because it doesn't strike me as it's very tied to the National Planning Policy Framework. And we got a bit of a guide about the environmental elements and some other elements as well. And that seemed sufficient to frame the debate around. And the debate has been very much on that point. So, we've had the debate. We all understand where we're coming from, and it'd be helpful to get a steer from the officers as to what grounds we can and can't refuse on, because we went into it with an open mind, and we've sort of given our honest opinions, but now we need an understanding of the context of refusal, because that's less clear.
So we'd be happy to word technical reasons for refusal based on the core issues that you as the committee members identified. So at the moment, I've noted down two core issues. First one is the unacceptable visual appearance of the gravel, recycled plastic cell gravel, and the significant adverse impact on the character and local distinctiveness of the Ludwell Valley Park. The first one, and then second issue that's been referred to is the unacceptable adverse impact and residential amenity due to increased noise resulting from the recycled plastic cell gravel. So that at the moment, those are the two things that I've noted. We can draft technical reasons for refusal based on those two issues, and if the committee are happy, we'll need somebody to propose and second those issues, along with any other issues you want adding. And then if I can then ask you, if you're happy, then to delegate the drafting and the issuing of that decision to officers based on those core issues.
First of all, Councillor Mitchell and Councillor Atkins. Thank you. Even though I voted differently, I can understand the position of people who voted in the way they did, the reasons they did. And I think the directors summed it up well, because what we've got to bear in mind was looking at the Grasscrete, which formed a part of the initial application, to some extent coloured the determination of that application. And what, if, for example, they come up with Grasscrete at that time, that might have been an issue in itself at that particular time. So therefore, I do believe the issue of the sympathetic nature to the natural environment of that situation is important, even though I personally think the weighting was slightly different to some members was said. And coming to the point which I wanted to raise, effectively there is nothing on the table at the moment, because all we've done is refused the existing recommendation, and the director is quite right. We need someone in a moment to move the reasons for refusal and for a separate vote to be taken on that. That was the only point I wished to make.
Thank you, Councillor Atkins.
Yeah, you asked for reasons for refusal, and I just looked at.
Reasons for refusal, and I just looked at page 48, the impact of change on the character and local distinctiveness of Ludwell Valley Park, and it says various things in that. It says it states that National Trust and English Heritage are increasing using gravel surfaces for their sites for appearance and climate change reasons. The argument is that this material should therefore the appropriate for this site and cannot be considered to be visually intrusive. This site is located in Lardwell Valley Park, making it more sensitive location than existing golf driving range. It is considered that the comparison with National Trust and English Heritage is not a good one. Whilst these sites commonly have historic and landscape sensitives, gravel drive is often an aesthetically harmonious addition to the grandiose building or structure belonging or managed by these organisations. The context is considered to be different here. And it goes on to say blending with the character of the Valley Park. So I think the reason for refusal is within the officer's description of just that on its own. That was my reason for refusing it, as well as I didn't feel that I had enough environmental information available for other reasons that I mentioned earlier as well.
Thank you, Councillor Atkinson. Does anybody else wish to contribute? No, in that case, are we now at the stage where we need somebody to propose? Second. Yes, so I need somebody to propose the comments to be made. Well, I'm seeing Councillor Hughes, first of all, and I'm seeing a second from Councillor Jobson. Yeah. Before we propose it. So,
Would you like me to propose it, or?
Well, yes, I think who is
So we need someone from the committee to propose the reasons for refusal, and then for that to be seconded, and then you need to vote on those reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I quoted straight away in my first initial comment from page 48, and I gave you at least 2, if not 3 reasons why I had refused it. So my proposal is that we turn down the application for the amendment on the grounds that the impact of the change on the character and local distinctiveness of Ludwell Valley Park is a negative one, and on the grounds that the impact of the noise is unacceptable to the surrounding neighbours who have already expressed great concern about it. I would also suggest that there isn't enough information given about the sustainable construction of the alternative. Is that enough?
Councillor Jobson, you happy with that wording? Discussion after. Right, so I was going to, first of all, we've had a proposal and a seconder, so I will invite short comments if you wish, based on this motion.
Before the vote, I'd like reassurance from the officers that they think they've got enough that would be defendable against an appeal.
Always an important question. So thank you for raising it, Councillor Ketchin. We have, as we know, we have to abide by national planning policy framework, our local plan policies. Whether it's always a difficult question. Can we defend reasons for issues? They're legitimate reasons. The chances of success, that is really difficult question for us to answer, but they are legitimate reasons based on planning factors.
Thank you. Contribution from Councillor Mitchell.
A quick question. In the summary that the applicant gave, he talked about the changes they made at the their main golf course from the Grasscrete to this new system. Was that subject to planning permission?
I just feel we could be in an awkward position if on the site, we'll all be grass.
I don't think we can answer that tonight, I'm afraid. And we need to go away and look at that, I'm afraid. So we can't answer that. I can't answer that question.
All right, we have a motion before us. It has been seconded. Does anybody else wish to make a contribution? No. In that case, I am now inviting those in favour of this motion to clearly indicate so by raising their hands. Those in favour? That's 8 in favour. Those against? That's 2 against. Any abstentions? Right, in that case, that has
Motion has been carried.
Yeah, motion has been carried. Right, we're now moving on to the next item on our agenda. Okay, yeah, so I will, whilst I'm finding the right page in the agenda, just pass the microphone to the director.
You want me to summarize? We have longer agendas.
Right, okay, so yeah, so the basic summation of what has happened here is we've listened to an application for a variation of conditions. We have refused that variation of conditions. We've given reasons for that refusal. And those reasons will now be recorded and will be worked on by officers and will be communicated to the appellant.
Well, officers given delegate authority to draft.
Yes, of course. And then the final thing that the officers have been given authority to draft and issue the decision. Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, Director. Sorry about that. Right. Very brief pause for refreshments or whatever. Councillor Bennett.
I just wanted to say, with the delegation to the officers, could yourself as the chair of planning committee be informed of that?
Yes, I think that will.
Yeah.
So I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
With the officers with the delegated powers, could they inform the chair of planning on that?
Because you've already voted and agreed to
There is nothing that I would be able to do except to look at the wording. But I can ask to see the wording if you wish.
You've voted now and agreed that there was 3 reasons to allow officers to draft those technical reasons and issue the decision. What you haven't done is agreed for that then to be delegated back to the chair. So, yeah, if you wanted to do that, you needed to have done it as part of the.
I think it's okay. We've got the situation where you've made the decision. The decision has been quite significantly passed by the committee, and that is now being delegated back to the officers. The officers will draft the response and communicate it. Okay. I did call a recess. Councillor Hughes has left for a comfort break. We are at rather later than planned. Literally just 2 minutes more, please.
Good parish council to be here. It'd be a parish council. We're doing very well.
I have the standing orders here. Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, good parish council stuff.
There we go. Thank you very much indeed. We are now moving on to agenda item 7. This is a list of decisions made and withdrawn applications. You have received these in your pack, and I invite comments or questions to the director. I have a question from Councillor Mitchell.
Not a specific question. I know we've missed a meeting in the cycle, but it does seem that we've got a considerable number of delegated decisions that have been made. I just wonder if the officers can tell us whether there's been an upturn in the number of planning applications we're processing or dealing with, because naturally we're being told that planning applications are decreasing, and as I say, there seems to be a significant number here that have been determined since we last met.
Yes, so thank you for the question, Councillor Mitchell. Without giving you exact facts, can report that we are experiencing a downturn in the number of planning applications, and that's affecting our fee income. I can't give you the exact figures, but we're definitely experiencing that trend.
So this large amount is just due to the length of meeting since our last meeting in effect?
I couldn't say that for 100%, but we are definitely recording a decrease in the particularly of majors. Okay, so if there are no further questions on that, so we have noted the report. We're now moving on to agenda item 8, which is the appeals report. And again, you've had this information in your packs, and I invite questions to the director. Councillor Mitchell.
A point of observation on Pennsylvania Road 3.3. I think it's most encouraging that the inspector on this occasion supported community balance from the neighbourhood plan. So it just proves how useful neighbourhood plans can be within a community to represent the views and values of that community. And on this occasion, the inspector, as distinct from the previous inspector who took a somewhat contrary view, this one was very supportive of the concept of community balance, and we look forward to it strengthening in the new local plan.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other comments on the appeals? No, in that case, can we please note the report? We have come to the end of our agenda items. The next meeting will be on the 13th of January in this very place. Councillor Ketchin.
I would just like to make a closing comment for the directors. Perhaps appreciation, maybe give a warm glow at Christmas, but we now have some cranes in Exeter, I notice, which might please them coming into the new year.
With lights on them. You mean the metal ones, the metal ones.
Yeah, you can't miss them.
Right, thank you all very much indeed for your attendance. I appreciate the attention to detail that you are exhibiting and for the level of debate. Thank you all and good night.
Ho, ho, ho. Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, God.